Have you ever felt like everything you loved in your life crumbles in an instant? Perhaps you've faced losses that seemed insurmountable, leaving your heart full of emptiness and your dreams in ruins. But today I want to share with you a powerful truth. God has a restoration plan for you, no matter how great the destruction or how deep the wound. God is ready to rebuild every aspect of your life with His infinite grace and love. In today's journey, we will explore how divine promises can bring renewal, healing, and abundance into your life. From abundant provision to healing of your deepest wounds, each section is designed to remind you that you are not alone and that God is actively working to transform your pain into purpose. Before you begin, I want to invite you to declare in faith, Lord, I surrender my losses and hurts to you. I trust in your power to restore every area of my life. Thank you for your inexhaustible love and for the blessings you are already preparing for me. May this declaration be the first step towards a renewed life full of hope, peace, and divine purpose. Let's go together to discover the greatest miracle that God has in store for you. Let's start number 1. God will restore every aspect of your life. Everything you have lost will return to your life. Have you ever had the feeling that everything is falling apart around you? That maybe you've suffered terrible losses and felt that everything you've put so much effort into building was suddenly gone? The key thing to remember is that God sees your suffering, is fully aware of all you have gone through, and has a plan to make things right. What you have lost, and do it in such an abundant way that you will overcome your own dreams. Because that is what God does, transforms ashes into beauty, pain into purpose, and losses into blessings. In the book of Joel, we find a promise that is simply incredible. God says, "And restore to you the years that the locust ate." Now imagine this, in the context of the book of Joel, locusts were not just insects, they were a symbol of total destruction, a disaster that wiped out everything people needed to survive. Locusts were arguably the ancient equivalent of watching as a hurricane sweeps through your home or a crisis takes away everything you have. But God, with His infinite grace, promises to restore not just what was destroyed, but the entire years the locust stole. Think about that. It's not just a promise to give back material things like grain, wine, or oil. Is a promise that encompasses lost time, opportunities you thought would never return, peace that was taken away from you. God promises to restore everything, including your broken heart, your abandoned dreams, and your dashed hope. And here's the key. That promise isn't just for Joel's people. It's for you. It's for you that maybe you're watching this and thinking about everything you've lost in life. Maybe you've lost someone you love, a job you thought was your future, or a relationship that you thought would last forever. Maybe you feel like you've wasted time, whole years fighting problems, insecurities, or failures. But God says, I can restore everything. He not only wants to heal the visible, like your finances or your health, but also the invisible, like you, inner peace and your joy. What impresses me most about this promise is its depth. It's not just about an external change. God works from the inside out. Because what's the point of recovering material things if our heart is still hurting, full of resentment or fear? God wants to transform everything. He wants to give you a fresh start, a renewed perspective, and the strength to live with purpose. He wants to restore your joy, your confidence, and your faith that the best is yet to come. But here's the challenge. You're willing to trust it. Because restoration begins with a leap of faith. Sometimes the enemy whispers that it's impossible to recover what was lost, that it's too late. But God says otherwise. He invites you to lift your eyes, to stop looking at the ruins and start seeing His promise. And when you do, something changes and you begin to walk with hope, with the assurance that the God He promised to restore is the same one who will fulfill that promise. Let me ask you a question. What are the locusts in your life? Maybe they are mistakes you made, defiance out of your control, or people who hurt you. Identify those areas and present them to God. He can restore even that which seems irreparable. If He could bring life to dry bones, as He did in Ezekiel's vision, He will not also be able to restore what you have lost. Lastly, do not forget to testify when you see His hand at work. To speak of what God has done in your life not only gives glory to Him, but strengthens the faith of others. Perhaps your story is exactly what someone else needs to believe that restoration is also possible for them today. I want to invite you to declare this promise about your life. Say it in faith. Lord, I believe that you will restore all that I have lost. I trust in your power and in your love. Thank you for what you are already doing, even when I can't see it, because that is the first step towards the greatest miracle of your life. Get ready because God is already at work. Number 2, God will renew your strength. Have you ever felt so strong, tired that it seems impossible to take one more step? Maybe it's the weight of daily responsibilities, the constant struggle against adversity, or simply the exhaustion of trying to keep everything under control. And in the midst of that tiredness, you feel that your strength is not enough, that you can't take it anymore. But let me tell you something that can change everything. God didn't create you to live in a state of eternal exhaustion. He has a promise to you, and it is this: those who wait on Jehovah will have new strength. They will raise wings like eagles. They will run, and they will not grow weary. They will walk, and they will not weary waiting on God. It is not about standing still or surrendering. It is not about crossing your arms and saying what happens. It will happen. On the contrary, waiting on God is an active act, a decision to trust in His plan, even when you do not understand the why or the it is to seek His presence in the midst of chaos, to believe in His power when your strength is insufficient, and to depend on His promise when all seems lost. It is like being in the most important waiting room of your life, not because you are wasting time, but because you are preparing for something much bigger than you imagine. And here comes the beautiful thing about Isaiah 40:31. God not only promises to give you strength, but not new strength, a small temporary recharge, like someone who takes a short break and is still tired. Nell speaks of a complete, integral renewal that affects your body, your mind, and your spirit. It is a force that lifts you above circumstances, like an eagle that flies high, seeing everything from a different perspective. You have noticed how eagles do not get caught in the middle of the storm. They use the wind to ascend, to go even higher. That's the strength God promises, not only to get through the storm, but to use it as an impulse to reach new heights. Maybe right now you're feeling exhausted. Maybe you think there's no way out of what you're facing. Maybe tiredness isn't just physical, but emotional or spiritual. But I want you to know something. Tiredness is not a sign of failure. It's an invitation from God to stop, to let go the control, and to say to Him, Lord, renew my strength. Is a reminder that you don't have to do it all alone, that you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, because when you trust Him, when you wait for His perfect time, He begins to work in ways that you could never imagine. And the promise doesn't stop there. God says that you will run and they will not tire you, and they will not tire you just one more step. It's impossible, right? But God promises to give you a supernatural energy, resistance that doesn't come from you, but from Him. It's His power acting inside you, not yours. Yet this force isn't something that just happens. It's not like hitting a button. Spend time with God, become closer to Him, and confide your concerns and anxieties to Him. It takes faith to keep you steady as you wait, knowing that His time is always flawless. Trust to believe that even when you don't see results right away, He's working. I want you to consider this now. What aspects of your life require rejuvenation? What burdens you have been bearing alone for a long time? And what dreams you abandoned because you felt you lacked the strength to give all of that to God? While you are doing so, have faith that He will give you new strength in ways you can't even imagine. God is inviting you to soar like an eagle, to rise above your circumstances, to view the world differently, and to live with the assurance that all is possible with Him, rather than being trapped on the ground and fighting for your life. Number 3. God will heal your wounds. Have you ever felt that the wounds in your heart are so deep that it seems impossible that they will ever heal? Perhaps they were caused by someone who abandoned you, or even by your own decisions that ended in failure. If so, let me tell you that God sees, understands, and has a promise for you. I will bring healing for you, and I will heal your wounds. Jehovah says that this promise, which is written in Jeremiah 37, is for you, for your life, for your pain, and for every part of your heart that needs to be restored. When God gave this word to Israel, the people were devastated, living in exile far from their home and everything they knew. In those dark moments, God steps in and declares something powerful. You are discarded. They felt abandoned and rejected, as if no one remembered them. Sometimes we don't feel that way either, as if our struggles are so great that no one notices them, as if the world is moving on while we carry an unending pain. There are spiritual wounds, times when we feel like our faith has been beaten and that we are drifting away from God. But here is the Amaziphramize about God promise. S superficial, G is not superficial. L, he does not put a band-aid on it. He is working to heal your wounds, restore your life, and remind you that you are valuable. On a broken heart, he transforms that heart from within, and that healing is integral. It's physical, emotional, and spiritual. God doesn't stop until every part of you is restored. You know what else God does? He restores our dignity. Sometimes wounds rob us of a sense of our worth. We convince ourselves that we're not enough, that we're not worthy of being loved, or that our mistakes define us. But God looks at us with different eyes. He not only heals our wounds, but also gives us back the value we have lost. He reminds us that we are loved, chosen ones, and that there is nothing that can separate us from His love. Now think for a moment what wounds you are carrying at this moment. Maybe they are words that marked opportunities that you lost or dreams that you abandoned. I want you to know that God is ready to take those wounds and transform them. But here's the challenge. You must trust His process. God's healing is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes time, and that time can be difficult because it is difficult for us to let go of control. But in those moments of waiting, God is at work. He is preparing something much greater than you can imagine. The most beautiful thing about all of this is that God uses our wounds for a greater purpose. What was once your greatest pain can become your greatest testimony. Those scars are not signs of defeat. They are reminders that God lifted you up, healed you, and made you stronger. Maybe you think your wounds make you weak, but in reality, they are the place where God's power can shine the brightest, because when others see what God did in your life, they will be inspired to hoax as well. Today, I invite you to do something very important. Give your wounds to God, talk to Him, tell Him where it hurts, tell Him how much it has cost you, and then trust that He will do what He promised. He will heal your wounds and restore every area of your life. No matter how much time has passed or how deep those wounds are, His love is greater, and when He finishes, you will not only be healthy, you will be renewed, strengthened, and ready to walk in the purpose He has for you. God is not done with you. Your healing is on the way. Just trust Him. Number 4, God will fill your life with abundance. You imagine a full table where nothing is missing and you can eat your fill without worrying about tomorrow. That's the picture God gives us in Joel 2:26. It's more than a promise of physical nourishment. It's a representation of His generosity beyond what you can imagine. God is not a God of scarcity or just enough. He is a God who exceeds our expectations, who provides in abundance, and who transforms lack into fullness. The abundance that God promises is not limited to the material. Many times we think of provision as something as much as money, food, or possessions. But God goes far beyond that. His abundance touches deep areas of our being, those that we don't always show. He fills the emptiness left by sadness. He restores peace when anxiety invades us and gives us joy instead of hopelessness. It is that full satisfaction that does not come from things, but from knowing that He is taking care of us in every detail. And here is something important. The promise of God isn't just to replace what you've lost. It's a restoration that exceeds your expectations. Think about that for a moment. It's not like He just gives back what you had before. It's like He multiplies everything, bringing you to a place of greater blessing and purpose. It's the kind of restoration that not only fixes what has been broken, but transforms it into something new, better, and stronger. When we experience this abundance, there is something that happens naturally: praise. Because how can you not be thankful when you see the wonders that God does? Praise is not just a reaction. It's a direct connection with God, recognition of His goodness, and that praise not only strengthens your relationship with Him, but also becomes a testimony to others. When people see what God has done in your life, when they hear how He has restored your life, faith is also strengthened. Your gratitude can be the spark that inspires someone else to believe in God's promises. And speaking of restoration, we cannot ignore one of the most beautiful parts of this verse: and never, ever will my people be ashamed. How often do we feel embarrassed of our circumstances, losses, or failures? God takes away the shame by reminding us that we are His people and restoring our dignity in the process. In God's eyes, you are precious, regardless of what other people may think or what you have experienced. His restoration affects not just what you have, but also who you are. He restores your identity and restores whatever confidence you may have lost. You could be thinking now, that sounds fantastic, but the first step in how I apply it to my life and how I hope for that abundance is realizing how God has already provided. You may not see him in a grand way yet, but every little detail and every daily provision is a sign of his faithfulness. While you wait for that full restoration, remember that gratitude opens doors that discouragement cannot touch. Praise God even before you see the full fulfillment of his promises. Have faith that he is working even when it seems like nothing is happening. God's abundance comes in his perfect time. Sometimes we get discouraged because we don't see the results right away, but I can assure you that he is never late. He is arranging every detail so that when his provision arrives, it will be bigger and more significant than you could have ever imagined. So today, as you reflect on this promise, make room in your heart for hope. Trust that God will fill every area of your life with his abundance. He will restore what has been lost, exceed your expectations, and take you to a place of wholeness where his love, his peace, and his purpose are reflected in every aspect of your life. And when he does, do not forget to praise him because his faithfulness never fails. Prepare for the best is yet to come. Number 5, God will heal your wounds. Prepare for a total and transformative restoration. There are moments in life in which the heart seems unable to bear any more deep wounds, painful memories, words that marked us. You have been there, maybe you are right now. But there is one truth I want you to hear. Today God sees those wounds. He does not ignore them. Rather, he is ready to heal each one of them. Psalm 14:73 says it so clearly. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. This is not, it's just a nice phrase. It's a real and powerful promise to you. When we talk about a broken heart, we're not just talking about a moment of fleeting sadness. We're talking about those experiences that break us from the depths. It can be a loss, a betrayal, a dream that was never fulfilled, or even a mistake that you feel you can never overcome. The pain can be so great that you think no one can overcome it. Understand that he is alone in your suffering. But let me tell Yosomething G. God not only understands your pain, and H carries it with you. I did it by myself. He let you deal with it on your own. Your wounds only see you, but God is like that compassionate, caring doctor. It's crucial to keep in mind that a patient's physical wounds need more than simply care. They also require bandaging, treatment, and covering. During this procedure, a bandage is applied. That's precisely what emotional wounds are. Our emotional wounds are shallow patches on the outside. A superficial patch on the outside heals from the inside out, bringing about total restoration, and he does it with a love that makes you feel horrible for being weak and damaged. Now, take a time to consider your own scars. They may be evident, such as strained relationships or glaring failures, or they may be subtle, such as the anxiety you never voice aloud or the uncertainty you carry within. No matter what these wounds are, God is aware of them. He hears every tear you shed and every thought you have kept to yourself. The important thing is that God does not only want to heal them. He can do so because his love knows no bounds and his power is limitless. God's healing goes much deeper than simply relieving pain. It restores the inner peace, the joy that seemed lost, the hope that you thought you would never feel again, and most importantly, your dignity. Often, our wounds make us feel less valuable, as though our mistakes or circumstances define us. However, God sees past all of that, reminding you that your worth is not derived from your actions. Even if it occurred to you, your tale, wound, conclusion, and moving testimony are all exquisite. What if your testimony, God's power, may be used to encourage others via your extreme suffering? You have a lot of power. Even if you can't see it now, your wounds, the scars left behind after Gohalb, will serve as a reminder of his faithfulness and his fulfillment of his promises. Talking to God about your wounds is the first step I want you to do today. Give them to him and have faith in his method. Regardless of how large or insignificant you believe they are, even though you might not notice the change right away, know that he is at work. As you wait, keep giving him praise, because it not only shows the world that you believe in a God who never fails, but it also strengthens your faith. Keep in mind that God not only heals but also restores. So no matter how broken your life is, he can now create a new one, and when he does, you'll be stronger, more complete, and filled with his love. He is not done with you. Let the healing process begin today. Number 6, God will keep you. There are moments when it seems like the world is collapsing around us, when we feel like we are stuck in a dark valley, as if the shadow of death were just a step away. It's that feeling of despair, of not knowing how to escape, and when fear seems to take over, there is a promise that illuminates the way. Even though I walk in a valley of the shadow of death, I won't fear any evil, because you will be with me, your rod and your silence will give me encouragement. This verse from Psalm 230 is not just poetry, it is a declaration of faith, an anchor for the soul in times of storm. The valley of the shadow of death is not just a metaphor, it represents those situations in which it seems that everything is against us, a devastating loss, an unexpected diagnosis, or the fear of facing an uncertain future. Those valleys are real and they can be terrifying, but look at what the psalmist says, I will not fear any evil. Why? Because you do not walk alone. God is with you even in the darkest places. His presence does not eliminate the valley, but it does transform how you cross it. Knowing that He is by your side gives you a courage that fear cannot extinguish. The rod and the silent one that the psalmist mentions are powerful symbols. The rod represents God's authority, His power to protect you from any danger, is like a shield that defends you from what you cannot face alone. And the quiet one, that shepherd's tool, symbolizes His care and guidance. Think about how a shepherd uses the quiet to keep his sheep on the right path, to rescue them when they go astray. This is how God acts in your life. He not only protects you, He also guides you with tenderness, making sure you don't get lost in the process. We all have those moments when the darkness seems too dense, when our strength seems exhausted. But here's the good news. God isn't just with you, He breathes encouragement into you. To you, that word encouragement is more than a pratydia. It's a renewing force that God puts you to you. It's like a breath of life that lifts you up when you feel like you can't take another step. And it's not a breath that comes and goes. It's steady enough for every day, for every step you need to take. Now, I want you to consider your own shadows that I'm going through and that you're going through right now. Perhaps it's a financial struggle, a broken relationship, or a dying dream. But whatever it is, I want you to remember that the valley isn't the end. It's just a part of it. And even though it may not be obvious right now, God is using that valley to strengthen and transform you, because it's in the darkest moments that we grow, where our faith deepens, and where we learn to rely entirely on Him. God doesn't let you go through the valley aimlessly. Every trial, tear, and struggle has a greater purpose. And sometimes that purpose is simply to remind you that His grace is sufficient, even in the most difficult moments, and other times that purpose is to turn your valley into a testimony, a story that inspires others to trust in God, even when all seems lost. So today, I want to encourage you to do something. Don't ignore your shadows, look at them head on, but do it with the certainty that you are not alone. Invite God to walk with you in that valley, talk to Him, trust in His rod, and be quiet and allow His breath to renew you. Because even though the valley is dark, His light is always stronger. And when you come out the other side, you'll be stronger, braver, and you will be closer to Him than ever before. God keeps you even in the darkest moments, and that is a truth that never changes. Number 7, God will double your honor. Shame can be one of the most devastating feelings that as we face it, it makes us feel small, insignificant, as if I didn't deserve anything good. Perhaps you felt that burden before, a public failure, a mistake that seemed irreparable, or rejection from someone you cared about. But I want you to listen to this carefully. That shame is not the end of your story. God has an incredible promise for you. And it's in Isaiah 61, verse 7. Instead of your shame, you will have double honor, and instead of an affront, they will shout for joy over their inheritance. Wherefore in their lands they will possess double honor and have perpetual joy. This is not just a hope. It is a certainty. The double honor that God promises is not a simple forgiveness or a small compensation for what you have lost. It is an abundant restoration, a blessing that surpasses what you ever imagined. It is God telling you, I know what you suffered, I know what was taken from you, and I am here to give it back to you multiplied. Imagine that for a moment, the areas of your life where you previously experienced humiliation, pain, or failure will be transformed into sources of honor, joy, and purpose. God doesn't just restore, He multiplies, and it's not just a matter of what He gives you. It's about who you are in Him, because, let's face it, shame has an impact on you from the inside out. It also impacts your self-worth and self-esteem. The lovely thing is that God views you as a cherished child rather than as someone who has made errors, failed, or shown weakness. Let's turn our attention to the youngster next. He provides repair to your identity as well as to your situation. He reminds you that you are defined by what God has prepared for you, not by what you have lost. When God promises you twice as much as you have material possessions, it truly matters. That is, your happiness. And in reality, you are happy. You notice what the have has perpetual joy. You can see it. Maybe right now you're wondering, but how can this apply to me? How can I let go of shame and trust that God will actually do this in my life? First, recognize the areas where shame has tried to control you. Don't ignore them. Talk to God about them. Second, trust in His promise of restoration, even if things seem impossible. Remember that God is not limited by our circumstances. His power is greater than any obstacle. And here comes the most exciting thing. When God restores, it's not just for you. Your story can inspire others. Your testimony of how God exchanged your shame for honor, your sorrow for joy, can be the reminder someone else needs to believe that it's possible for them too. So don't be silent. Talk about what God is doing, even if you're still in the process, because in His time, He will complete the work that He began in you. I want to encourage you today to make this statement. Lord, I trust your promise. I believe you can transform my shame into honor, my pain into joy. Help me to walk in faith as I hope to see your restoration complete in my life. Because that's the key. Walk in faith, knowing that the best is yet to come. God doesn't just promise to restore you. He promises multiply His blessing in your life. And when He fulfills joy, it will be perpetual, not temporal, not transient, perpetual. Can you imagine that? Because that is exactly what awaits you. Number 8, God will transform your tears into joy. Have you ever felt that all your effort, everything you have tried to build, has been watered with tears? Maybe you are working hard, struggling to get ahead, praying without ceasing, but it seems that there are no results, just pain and weariness. Let me tell you something. Those tears you shed are not in vain. In Psalm 12:65, God gives us a promise that is as powerful as it is comforting. Those who sow with tears, with rejoicing, will reap. This is not just a pretty verse. It's a truth that can change your perspective. Sowing with tears, it's not easy. It represents those moments when you're giving your best, even when the pain seems to be greater than your strength. Maybe you're praying for the restoration of your family, struggling in a job that doesn't seem to bear fruit, or facing emotional challenges that make you feel on edge. But I want you to stop for a moment and think about what it means to sow. To sow, it's not a passive act, it's an investment. It's a job that requires faith. Because even though you don't see the results right away, you trust in that something will grow. And here is the key. God promises that there will be a harvest, but not just any harvest. Will be a harvest with joy. A joy that will fill your heart beyond what you can imagine. That joy will not be superficial. It will be deep and lasting because it will come as the result of everything you have sown with tears. It is as if every tear you have shed becomes a seed watering the soil of your life so that God can do something amazing. Sometimes it's hard to understand the purpose of our tears, why I have to go through this, why I can't see the fruits now. But let me tell you, something: God wastes nothing. Every tear you shed is seen by Him. Every moment of pain has a purpose in His perfect plan. He's using those tears to mold you, to strengthen your character, and to prepare the land for something far greater than you imagine. Because God doesn't just restore, He transforms. What today seems painful tomorrow will be a testimony of His faithfulness. I want you to think about the areas of your life where you've been sowing with tears. Maybe it's a relationship that seems broken, a dream that seems unattainable, or a constant effort that shows no results. Now imagine those tears as seeds planted in fertile soil. You may not see the growth yet, but beneath the surface, God is at work, and when His time is perfect, that seed will sprout and bear fruit. The key here is perseverance. Don't give up. Keep planting, keep praying, keep believing, because the harvest is coming, and when it comes, it will not only be abundant, it will be greater than you can imagine. God promises not only to meet your needs, but to overabundance. He does not give in a limited way. He gives generously, and when that harvest comes, there will be joy, a joy that replaces all the pain and weariness. Today, I encourage you to keep going. Talk to God about your feelings, even if it seems like you're crying, but don't lose faith in His plan. You'll understand why you cried each tear, when you look back, ways you never imagined, your harvest comes and will be with joy. Trust in him. Number 9, God will comfort your soul. In the midst of all of this, Psalm 23 verse 3 offers us a powerful promise. He will comfort my soul, he will lead me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. These words serve as a reminder that God is not only aware of our weariness, but also committed to restoring and guiding us. When the psalmist says that God comforts our soul, he is not referring to superficial relief, but rather to deep restoration, renewal that comes even to the innermost part of our being. Even when we are facing challenges, God does not disregard our suffering or downplay our hardships. Rather, he treats us with the kindness of a shepherd tending to his sheep, renewing us, giving us peace, and giving us strength that comes from his ever-present presence rather than from ourselves. The verse then tells us that God leads us along paths of righteousness. Now, consider this. God not only restores us, but he also gives us direction. Sometimes we may feel as though we are aimlessly wandering around in the midst of our struggles, but God, like a faithful shepherd, leads us to paths of righteousness, which not only bring us to safety, but also align us with his purpose. To live in righteousness is to reflect God's nature in our choices and deeds, leading lives that glorify his name. We must remember that God guides us for the glory of his name, not because of our deservingness, but because of his love for us. This implies that his leadership is an expression of his loyalty and his will to offer us his love throughout our lives, even if we deviate from him. The rod and its silence are there to correct us with love and get us back on the right path. You may wonder how you can experience this comfort and guidance in your daily life. It all starts with acknowledging your need for God. At times we try to carry everything on our own. But God invites us to let go of those burdens and let him renew us. Talk to him in prayer, tell him how you feel, and trust him in that he is listening, and then seek his guidance. That may mean meditating on his word, reflecting on his principles, or simply being silent to hear his voice. When you allow God to restore your soul and guide your steps, there begins to be a transformation. That inner peace he offers empowers you to face challenges with a renewed perspective. You realize that you are not alone, that there is a purpose in every step you take. And as you follow his guidance, you also begin to impact those around you. A life guided by God not only brings personal blessings, but also becomes a light for others. Today, I encourage you to reflect on those areas of your life where you need God's comfort. Give him your burdens and ask him to guide you on those paths of justice. Because when you trust him, you don't no matter how uncertain or difficult the road may seem, you can be sure that he will lead you to the best. His guidance is perfect, and his love never fails. Number 10, God will keep his mercy. Sometimes life seems like an earthquake. The circumstances around us move, change, and become unstable like those mountains that will move and hills that will tremble that Isaiah 54 verse 10 speaks of. We face moments of uncertainty that make us shake deeply. But right in the middle of that storm, God makes us a promise that is like an anchor. His mercy will not depart from us, and his covenant of peace will not be broken. That is a truth that can completely transform our perspective. Think about this. The mountains are symbols of stability, something we believe to be immovable. But even when those seemingly solid things in our life crumble, God remains steadfast in his mercy. It is not like a temporary contract that depends on our actions. It is an eternal commitment, a love that does not change no matter what we do or the circumstances we face. It is its immutable character that guarantees that even though everything around us is cut down, its love and compassion remain constant. And not only its mercy, but also its covenant of peace. That covenant is not like the peace that the world promises, a peace that depends on everything being in its place. It is a deep peace that transcends circumstance. It is that tranquility that allows us to breathe even when everything around us seems chaotic. It is like a shelter in the middle of a storm, a reminder that even though the winds blow strongly, we are safe in their hands. But how we can experience this peace and mercy in our daily lives, we first need to recognize that we cannot depend it is only from our own strength or from the things that seem stable around us, that it is easy to trust in the tangible, in what we see and control. but God invites us to trust in the eternal, in His character, and in His promises. Speak to Him, open your heart in prayer, and let His word remind you that His mercy is unwavering. When we allow this truth to penetrate deep within our lives, we start to live differently in our hearts as God's peace becomes the foundation for our choices and the filter through which we encounter difficulties. We are no longer influenced by fear or uncertainty because we know that we are supported by a God whose faithfulness knows no bounds. Even in the face of loss, failure, or unforeseen changes, we can find stability in His unwavering love. The amazing thing is that this promise is not only for us to experience God's myodia and peace. We are called to share it with others. There are people around us who are also dealing with shifting mountains and quivering hills. And our testimony of God's faithfulness may be the motivation they need to trust Him. It tells of how God has been with you in the darkest of times, because His peace has been sufficient even when He has been able to do so. Things didn't make sense because when we share our stories, we not only glorify God, but also strengthen those around us. So today, I want to encourage you to live with the certainty that God's mercy will never depart from you. Allow that truth to be your refuge and your anchor. Trust that His covenant of peace is unbreakable and available to you in every moment. Because even though the mountains move and hills tremble, their love for you will never change. Number 11, God will restore your inheritance. The promise of Isaiah 51:11 is like a ray of light in the midst of darkness. Imagine the redeemed of Jehovah returning to Zion, not with the weight of weariness or the trace of pain, but singing with perpetual joy over their heads. Is a powerful image. Truth is a reminder that God does not only promises to restore what we have lost, but it does so with a joy that has no end. This is not an ordinary return. It is a return full of triumph and celebration. Think about it like this: we all face moments of loss or seasons where we feel that we have been torn from the life we imagined. It can be a relationship that was broken, a dream that seemed unattainable, or even the feeling of being far from God. But here's the amazing thing: God not only calls us back, but He does so by guaranteeing Himself perpetual joy. That joy is not temporary. It doesn't depend on whether things are going well or not. It's a deep joy that comes from knowing that we are in His presence, restored and complete. The song mentioned in this verse is not just an expression of happiness. It's a cry for freedom, a celebration of what God did when He came to be happy. God restores our lives. Our souls respond with gratitude with songs that reflect the joy we cannot contain. It is as if every note we sing is a testimony of His faithfulness, a proclamation that He keeps His promises. And here comes the best: pain and groaning will flee. That means the wounds of the past, the tears you shed, and the sighs of hopelessness will have no place in the life that God is restoring for you. In its place, there will be joy and peace, not because the scars disappear, but because God transforms those scars into testimonies of His redemptive power. Every tear you shed becomes the water that waters, the harvest of joy that is about to come. Maybe at this moment you feel that restoration is far away, that the wounds are too deep, or that the loss is too great. But let me tell you something: God's restoration has no limits. He not only gives you back what you lost, but multiplies it. He gives you an inheritance that does not wither, a joy that does not run out, and a peace that does not break. It is like a gift that not only does it meet, but it exceeds all your expectations. If you're in that season of waiting, don't give up. Have faith in God's plan. He hasn't forgotten you. His timing is flawless, and His promise is secure. Instead, He is organizing the specifics of your homecoming, ensuring that it is joyful and full of healing while you wait. Continue planting in February. Even if it doesn't seem like the tears will fall, keep singing. Stop because the joyous singing is closer than you think. Now, I want you to think about the times you have seen God restore something in your life. What areas of your heart need to be restored with joy and restoration? Take a moment to pray and give those areas to Him, because the promise of Isaiah 51:11 isn't just for a group of people in the past, it's for you. He is ready to restore your inheritance, fill you with joy, and make pain and groaning seem like a distant memory. Number 12, God will restore your life. Job's story is a powerful testament to how God can take what seems lost forever and not only restore it, but multiply it. Job endured such intense suffering that it would be easy to imagine him giving up. But he remained faithful to God in the midst of his questions and pain. This is a reminder to you that God is at work even when we can't see him right now. Thus, our trust shouldn't be based on our current situation. Let me tell you something that people often forget about this story. Job was restored because he chose to pray for his friends despite their judgment of him, not only because he persevered, can and condemn him. Could you fathom having the fortitude to pray for those who don't understand you when you're going through your own suffering? Didn't you? This shows us that restoration comes via prayer and forgiveness. During rationing, it seemed as if the floodgates were opened when Jay was on their side, yet God refrained. He offered him twice as much, but only returned what he had lost. This is something important. God's restoration is not a simple return. It is not about going back to the starting point. As if nothing had happened, God takes our losses and makes them a platform for something much greater. Job received double his possessions, his family was restored, and his health was renewed. But not only that, his relationship with God deepened in a way that I probably never would have imagined before going through the test. And this is not just an ancient story, it is a living promise for us. Today, you may feel that you have lost something irreplaceable, a relationship, an opportunity, your peace, but let me tell you something for sure. God is adept at restoring what has been broken. He can not only give you back what has been lost, but he can multiply it in a way that reflects his glory and his goodness. But here's the detail. You need to trust his time. Job had to go through a process, and so I want to invite you to reflect. Is there anything you need to surrender to God today? A loss, a pain, maybe a resentment that you have been carrying. Remember that Job had to forgive and pray for those who had hurt him before he experienced the double blessing. Maybe that be the step God is calling you to take today. Forgive, pray for others, and trust that God is at work. And as you wait for that restoration, don't lose sight of the most important thing. God hasn't forgotten you. He's with you every step of the way. Even though it seems dark now, the light of his promise keeps shining. He promises you that what you've lost won't be the end of your story. Like Job, you can expect a restoration that exceeds your expectations, a double blessing that shows the world what God can do with a life given to him. Therefore, when God acts, he will not only restore your life, but also turn it into something even more beautiful than you could have imagined. His plan is perfect, and his promise of restoration is certain. Number 13, God will heal your broken heart. When you have experienced a broken heart, you know how deep the pain can be. It's as if a part of you has been lost, and even though everything around you seems to be going on as usual, there is a wound inside of you that won't stop hurting. However, he promises to heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds. It's just a consolation, a divine assurance that your suffering won't last forever. God, the creator of the universe, is dedicated to healing your heart. It's not just a band-aid solution or a quick fix. He promises full healing from the bottom of your heart. It's like a doctor who not only treats the symptoms, but also goes to the root of the issue to make sure that everything is really well, and does so with love, tenderness, and endless patience. When God heals, he doesn't leave behind scars of bitterness. Instead, he creates tales of hope. Often, the first step toward healing is realizing that we have a wound. How often do we try to move on as if nothing had happened, keeping the pain even from ourselves? God can't heal what we don't give him, which is why it's so important to be honest with him, talk to him, and express your feelings. He already understands your heart, but he wants you to reach out to him for the healing process, even if those feelings are difficult to communicate. In the same way that a physical wound takes time to heal, emotional healing might take a long time. They also have their own rhythm. But the good news is that God will be with you every step of the way. He doesn't grow weary of us or frustrated with our process. Instead, he is there to bandage our wounds with his love and constant care. Sometimes that process involves praying, reflecting on his word, or even asking for help from other believers who can walk with you on this journey. When you finally start to experience healing, something beautiful happens. You don't just feel, but you are transformed. God's healing not only removes the pain, but it also alters your perspective so that the things that once defined or held you no longer have power over you. Instead of feeling broken, you start to feel renewed. That's the kind of healing God provides, a transformation that takes you to a place of peace and strength you didn't even know you could achieve. God's love is constant even in your darkest moments. When it seems like no one understands what you're going through, He's there. He understands your pain in a way that no one else can. And He doesn't just understand, act with compassion, with faithfulness, and with a promise that never fails. Heal your broken heart and give you renewed hope. If you're listening to this and find yourself in a place of pain, I want to cheer up. You're not alone. God sees your tears, hears your prayers, and is working to transform your pain into joy. Give Him your broken heart and trust that He will do something beautiful with it, because when God heals, He does it completely, deeply, and lastingly. Number 14, God will strengthen your fear. It's something we've all felt. It's true. It's that sense of uncertainty that what's coming could be bigger, harder than we can handle. But here's the incredible thing. God tells us not to be afraid. In Isaiah 41:10, He declares not to be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God, who will always strive for you. I will always help you. I will always uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness. It is not a mere suggestion. It is a powerful statement, a promise that no matter what we face, we are not alone for a moment, and it means that God is with you. His presence is not like that of a friend who with thee when all are well. It is a constant presence that does not change according to circumstances, that when and you are in the darkest valley, when the waves seem to drown you, He is there reminding you that you do not have to carry the weight, only that certainty changes everything. It does not eliminate difficulties, but it gives you the strength to face them with the confidence of that you have the Creator of the universe by your side. And then there's that part where He says, I'm your God who strives you. This is not just an abstract idea. It's a tangible reality. God is not only with you, He gives you the strength you need. It's as if He says, don't worry about what you feel you can't do. I'm going to give you the power to do it. And that strength, that can come in unexpected ways. Maybe it's a peace in the midst of chaos, or the courage to take a step that seemed impossible. God doesn't just promise to be with you. He promises to equip you for what's coming. Now listen to this. I'll always help you. That word always has no limits. It doesn't say, I'll help you only if you do everything right or only if you deserve it. It's an unconditional promise. No matter how many times you feel weak, confused, or even unworthy, God is there to help you. His help can come as a change in your circumstances, as a word of encouragement at just the right time, or as an inner strength that you didn't even know you had. And let's not forget what it means to sustain you with the right hand of my righteousness. This means that even when things don't make sense, you can trust God to be in control. God's right hand symbolizes His power, authority, and ability to support you when everything around you seems to be falling apart. It also serves as a reminder that you're not lost and that you're in the hands of someone who is not only powerful, but also righteous and faithful. So, how do we put this into practice? Let Isaiah's words serve as an anchor in your life. When fear whispers in your ear, respond with this promise. Remember that you don't have to face it alone. You can also pray, meditate on these words, and surround yourself with a community of faith that can remind you of these truths when you do it. And if you feel weak, remember, it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers or all the strength. You just need to take the next step knowing that God is with you, strengthening your steps. So today, trust this promise. Let it transform the way you face your fears, because the truth is this: God is not only with you, He is strengthening you, helping and sustaining you in every moment. And that friend mine is more than enough. And number 15, God will restore the double. God is speaking directly to you in Zechariah 9 verse 12. He tells you to go back to the fortress, prisoner of hope, because today I announce that I will restore you twice as much. Is not incredible? These words are loaded with promises of power and a love that does not change no matter what you have lived. And when God says prisoner of hope, He is not talking about someone trapped in despair, but of a person who, although surrounded by adversity, continues to cling to faith. Sometimes we feel like those prisoners, not bound by circumstances, by the pain of the struggles that seem endless. But even in the midst of that, hope remains, because we know that God is not done with us. He is our strength. No matter how weak you feel, God is there holding you up, reminding you that His strength, it's enough for whatever battle you face. It's like a shelter in the middle of a storm. You can run to it when all else fails, and there you'll find peace, security, and the promise of a better future. And then there's that powerful promise, I'll restore the double. This is a highly character-driven and pleasant notion. Charher, he is the restorer. He doubles your rewards rather than only returning what you've lost. Examine Job's life. He lost everything, yet God not only restored his possessions, but also quadrupled them when the time came. God works in this way. His healing is plentiful, comprehensive, and changes everything it comes into contact with. You may be wondering how I use this in my daily life. The first step is to identify the areas where you feel stuck, and that hope is all that's left. This can be a broken relationship, a financial loss, or even a dream that seems to have faded away. Then, while you wait for restoration, live as though you believe in the promise. Be grateful for what God is already doing. Even if you haven't seen it yet, pray, praise, and surround yourself with people who share your faith, because when you stand firmly in hope, it's a declaration that you trust Him to keep your faith. The process won't always be quick. There will be days when you question whether anything is changing, but let me tell you something. Every moment of waiting has a purpose. God is working on the details, preparing a restoration that is beyond your wildest expectations. When the time comes for you to get the restoration, don't keep it to yourself. Instead, share it with others. It's not just about what you get back. It's about who you'll become along the process. When God heals you, He also wants to use you to repair others, so your testimony may be the power someone else needs to maintain hope. So, today, return to that strength that is God. Hold on to hope, because He has promised, and when He promises, He always fulfills, and His restoration is on the way, and it will be abundant, complete, and more than you can imagine. Number 16. God comes in abundance. Did you know that Philippians 4 verse 19 contains one of the most consoling promises in all of Scripture, my God, because He will supply all that you lack according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus? He doesn't say, some of your needs, or if you are lucky, maybe God help you. He says, this is not something Paul writes at random. It is a testimony of what he himself lived when he wrote this letter. Paul was imprisoned and had to rely on the assistance of others to survive, but he declares in faith that God provides. Does it seem unbelievable to you that someone in the midst of adversity can speak with such confidence in God's generosity? God is not limited, nor does He currently provide from scarcity. Paul's use of the phrase, according to His riches and glory, gives us an idea of the scope of this provision. God's riches are boundless, and everything that we see and everything that we do not see belong to Him. He is the source, and it is like a loving father sitting at a full table and inviting you to sit and eat from that abundance. You are never left without anything, and there is always more than you need. Now, you may be wondering what this means for your day-to-day life, or perhaps you are dealing with a financial need, an emotionally taxing situation, or a spiritual battle that has left you worn out. I want to remind you that God is a provider, and that His provision is not limited to the material. He provides tranquility if you need it. He throws His affection around you if you need solace. He offers advice when you're in a tough spot, not only about money, but also about relationships and health. His generosity is evident in every area of life. Consider the following biblical examples. God sent manna to feed the people after providing a multitude with a few loaves and fish, and there was still food left over in the desert. God does not only see the Israelites, He does it every single day with a dash of lavish love and plenty. This demonstrates that His nature is to surpass our expectations rather than provide the bare minimum. The secret, however, is to have faith. The reverse of what this promise proclaims is often shouted at us by our surroundings. Doubt might arise from scarcity, but religion can help. Acknowledge your talent, entrust it to God, and have faith in His work. You could ask yourself, how can I trust when my situation doesn't change, even if you haven't seen the outcomes yet? Let me tell you something. Though God operates in ways that are beyond our comprehension and is not constrained by time or resources, He constantly works on behalf of His children, however, and this chapter shows something even more lovely. More provision may result from having a thankful heart. By acknowledging even the tiniest benefits, You are expressing your faith in God and your confidence that He will continue to provide. Put those benefits in writing, give thanks to God for what you already have, and see how your viewpoint changes. Gratitude turns fear into trust and anxiety into serenity. Remember that God asks us to be as giving to others as He is to ourselves, so this provision isn't just for you. It's with us. When you share what you have, it's reflecting your heart. It's like a circle. You give and God keeps filling. You don't stay empty because He always has more to give you. So today, no matter what your need is, remember this. God has abundance for you. Don't worry about the how or the when. Just trust He knows your needs better than you do, and He has a perfect plan to meet them. He lives in that promise. Thank you in advance and prepare to receive His unlimited generosity. Number 17. God has plans of hope. Jeremiah 29:11 is one of those promises that touches the depths of our heart. God says, because I know the thoughts I have about you, thoughts of peace and not evil, to give you the end you hope for, is an incredible statement. God is not improvising with your life. He has a plan, and it is not just any plan. It is a design full of hope, purpose, and future. This promise was not given in times of tranquility. It was addressed to a people in exile, to people who had lost everything, and it is there, in the midst of confusion and pain, where God assures that He has a perfect plan. Perhaps you feel in exile. Today, perhaps you are in a moment in which nothing it seems to make sense. Let me tell you this: God's thoughts towards you are not full of chaos or condemnation. They are thoughts of peace, of spiritual prosperity, of well-being. He has a specific purpose for your life. Everything you've been through, even the most difficult, is not a coincidence. It is part of a process in which God is writing an incredible story with you as the protagonist. You have noticed how God's plans usually exceed our lives' expectations. Consider Joseph, who was wrongfully imprisoned, sold into slavery, and betrayed by his brothers. Despite everything, God had a plan for him, making him a leader in Egypt to rescue many. You have the same experience. You may not understand now why you are going through certain things, but God already sees the end of your story. He sees how all this is molding you for something greater, something glorious. This also means that even in adversity there is hope. Hope is not a simple desire for things to turn out well. It is the trust that God is working even when we do not see Him. Jeremiah gives us that security in the midst of exile. God says, this is not the end. The same thing He tells you today. This difficult moment does not define your destiny. God is preparing something better, something that has an eternal purpose. But how do we apply this in our lives? It all starts with seeking His purpose. Is not just about following our dreams, but aligning our plans with God's. Spend time in prayer, immerse yourself in His Word, and listen to His voice. Ask Him, Lord, what you want me to do, what your plan is for me. And when you find out, act. Don't be paralyzed by fear or doubt. Take steps to faith, trusting that He's guiding you. Plus, you have to trust that His plans are always better. Sometimes we want to control everything, but trusting means letting go, means believing that even if things don't go as you expected, God is still good and still in control. It's like a map that you can't see complete yet, but you know that the guide knows the way. He'll take you where you need to be. And here's something powerful. Living with hope transforms your perspective, gives you stability, like an anchor in the midst of a storm. When you have hope in God's plans, you do not sink into discouragement. On the contrary, you move forward with confidence, knowing that the best is yet to come. That hope is contagious when others see your faith, are inspired, and your actions guided by the divine purpose impact not only your life, but also the lives of others. So today, I invite you to live in that promise. God has a plan for you, one full of hope and a bright future, no matter what your present looks like. Trust that He has already charted a path. Seek His purpose. Act in faith and keep hope alive, because the God who promises you a future is faithful to fulfill it. Number 18, God will transform you. Prepare to become a new creation in Christ. You imagine starting anew, completely renewed, as if your past no longer has power over you. That is precisely what 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17 assures us of. If you are in Christ, you are a new creature. Everything is transformed completely. The old things have gone. We are not talking about a simple superficial change, as when we try to do things differently on our own. but about a profound work done by God in our hearts, in our minds, and in our spirits. In the context of this promise, the Apostle Paul speaks of reconciliation with God, of how through Christ we become something completely different. Think of it as a metamorphosis, like a caterpillar that becomes a butterfly. The old is left behind. It no longer defines you. It no longer limits you in Christ. You have a new identity. You are no longer what you were, but what God says you are, loved, forgiven, renewed. But what it really means to be a new creation means that your identity is no longer rooted in your mistakes, in your failures, or in the wounds that others have caused you. It is now firmly established in Christ. Saul, who later became Paul, is a great example of this. He was a persecutor of Christians, someone full of hatred and fanaticism. But an encounter with Christ changed his entire identity. He was transformed, and he went from being a destroyer of the church to being one of its greatest builders. So radical it is the change that Christ can make. This transformation not only affects who you are, but also how you think. The Bible calls us to renew our minds, to align our thoughts with God's. This is crucial, because even though we are made new, our way of thinking still needs to be adjusted to this new reality. How we do this through the study of the Word, prayer, and meditation on God's promises. Little by little our thoughts are allied with His truth, and we begin to live as the new people we really are. Being a new creation also means leaving the past behind. How many times do we cling to things that no longer have a place in our lives? Old habits, fears, guilt. But in Christ, all of that loses its power. He frees us from the chains of the past, cleanses us, and gives us a new beginning, no matter how great your sin is. In Christ there is freedom. To live in that freedom means to let go of what binds you and embrace the abundant life that God has for you. And that renewal not only impacts you, but also your relationships as a new creation. God equips you to love better, to forgive faster, and to live with purpose. Your interactions change because your heart has changed. Now you can establish healthier and more meaningful relationships based on the love and grace you've received from God. Then how you live as a new creation all starts with daily faith practices. Prayer, time in the Word, and communion with other believers are essential. These things help you to stay connected to Christ and reflect His transformation in your life. Because being a new creation is not just a state, it's a way of living. It's getting up every day with the determination to reflect Christ in all that you do, to be a light in the world, and to be a witness to the transforming power of God. And don't stay with this transformation. For you just share your testimony. Talk about how God has changed you from the things you have left behind and from the blessings you have received. Because your story can be the impetus that someone else needs to seek Christ. Living as a new creation is not only a gift to you, it is a call to impact others. God has transformed you so that through your life many more can know His love and His transforming power throughout your life. Throughout this message, we have explored how God promises to restore every aspect of our lives. From the most painful losses to the deepest wounds, we have seen that His provision is abundant, His renewing strength is inexhaustible, and His transforming love is able to turn our tears into perpetual joy. Every promise we have studied reminds us that God not only restores what we have lost, but does so in a way that surpasses our own expectations. Now, I invite you to carry this truth with you. God is committed to restoring your life completely. No matter what section you are in right now, He has a perfect plan for you, full of hope and renewed blessings. I want to close this time with you with a powerful statement of faith. God, trust in your promises of restoration. I surrender all that I have lost and all my wounds at your hands. I know that you are working to renew my life, strengthening my heart and filling me with your abundance. Thank you for your faithfulness and for the miracle you are about to perform in me. Allow this statement to be a daily commitment to fully trust God, to seek His presence every step of the way, and to live with the assurance that God is restoring every area of your life. Share your testimony, inspire others with your faith renewed, and prepare to receive the greatest miracle God has in store for you. God is not done with you. Your restoration is underway. If you have reached the end of this video, you are a dedicated person committed to spiritual growth and drawing closer to God. The fact that you have come to the end demonstrates your determination to absorb knowledge and apply it in your life. Keep seeking wisdom and working to strengthen your faith and your relationship with God. Remember that learning and getting closer to God is a continuous and rewarding journey. My videos help people of any age to get closer to God, rediscovering forgotten teachings and deepening the divine word. Comment, "I am closer to God," to let us know that you have come this far and that you are on this journey of faith with us.